Hey everybody, I know it's been a while. I just wanted to make a video to let y'all know what I'm up to, and in particular I wanted to talk about the music tool that I've been working on, and I thought I'd do a tutorial series on how to build it and how to put it together, and we're going to cover some intermediate concepts. So in regards to the music tool, this is going to be an introduction video to show how this thing works, like what I've put together so far, and in particular, any of you who are interested in music blending, so in your games, you may want to fade one music track into another. I wanted the tool to do some blending, and we'll look at how that works. But also, I wanted to make a tool that could do some more complicated layering with music tracks. So, for example, in some games, they will have a percussive track, and then when the combat happens, and they'll bring in a rhythm and then maybe a melody and then kind of make it more intense based on gameplay events. So I wanted to build a tool that could do that for my own purposes, but then I figured that would be a good way to talk about some more intermediate programming concepts. So I imagine some of you might be music people or sound designers, and this is going to help you build a tool that you can reuse. And other of you might just be programmers who are looking to learn more about programming topics. So we're going to kind of cover both. And in the end, hopefully you have a tool that you can reuse and use over and over again for your own projects. And I'm intentionally making this to be reusable, make it easy, and we'll go through that. So I'm gonna open this up and look at my scene. One thing you may be thinking about is, why do I even need to build this tool? Some of you may be using third-party plugins like Fmod or WWise are very popular. These plugins are going to do a lot of these things automatically and probably in a much more efficient way. But when you tie your project to a third-party plugin like that, it requires a lot of overhead that many of you, if you're looking to do some simple prototyping or maybe even just participate in a game jam, you may not have time to do all the setup for that kind of stuff. So if any of you just want something simple that will do some blending, do some more complex layering and things, this will get the job done, and it won't require like all the overhead that comes with a third-party plugin. So I know one question y'all are going to have is, well, can't I just do this? And yeah, you could use a third-party plugin, and there are a lot of benefits. It's going to be more powerful, more consistent. You won't have to upkeep your own tools, but the downside is you have to commit your project to using a totally different system. And sometimes that can get very complicated when you're working with different versions of an engine or integration or anything like that. So I would say the larger your team, the more likely it is you want to look into a third-party plugin. But if you're just looking to make your own projects better, or you have a small team and you just want more control, then I think a simple tool like this is going to help you out. So I just wanted to make sure I cover that topic. Okay, so let's look at what the eventual tool is going to be. And when I actually go through the tutorial series, which I have not actually recorded yet, it may end up looking a little bit different and probably better in some cases. So I'm gonna hit the play button and I'm gonna talk you through what the tool is actually doing. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play a track and then I'm gonna blend it into another track. So I'm gonna do that now. So I'm going to pause it. I'm not going to try to talk over the music because sometimes it can muddy it out. I'm going to play another track with a specified amount of fade. So we're going to do that, and it's going to fade between two different tracks. So that's with a 5-second fade. You can actually make it even longer if you want, or you can fade this one out and then fade the next one in. We have the ability to do that, but the first goal of the tool is just to do some simple crossfades between tracks, so you can do that. I'm going to unpause it and then hit the stop button, and so you can fade out and you can see how that sounds. So that's actually a quicker fade. I think that one is like a 2 or 3 second, and the original blend was like a 5-second. So that's one thing you can do with this tool that I'll walk you through how to make. How to blend between tracks. Now, another thing you may have heard while I was loading up this first song is that I've split some of these songs into multiple layers. So I mentioned that you could hear a percussion backing, and then could add layers onto that. So I'm going to play this and you can hear how that sounds as well. So I'm going to play this first one. So this is just a really simple, just synthy track I made quickly inside of FL Studio. It's not going to sound fancy or anything. First, you're going to hear the percussion, and then I'm going to increase the layer level with a button press, and then you're going to hear this. And then I'm going to increase it one more time, and then you'll hear this. You're going to hear the percussion. Okay, now I'm going to hit the button to increase one more layer, so it's going to hit the synth. Okay, I'm going to increase it one more time, and then after I do that, I'm going to decrease it back down. Okay, so hopefully you can see how that works, how we're going between the layers. Another thing that I found that I wanted is instead of having additive layers, I wanted a way to do like individual ones. So sometimes you'll be, if you're doing music for games, you may have a separate ambient track and a separate middle track and then a separate full track. And all of these tracks are for a game I'm freelancing for called Apocalyptigro, and I'm going to link that in the channel. It's not out yet, but I just want to mention that just to give proper credit. So each of these tracks are independent and standalone. So what I'm going to do in this version is I'm going to play this track. Then when I increase the layer, this track's going to fade out and this one's going to fade in. And then I'm going to increase it again, and this one's going to fade out and this one's going to fade in. And you can see I've actually defined my assets as a single versus an additive. This one's single and the previous ones are additive, or is stacking the layers. Okay, so this is the ambient track, like the background. Right, so it's kind of spacey and very in the background and very ambient. So then we're going to increase it. But I'm going to pause here real quick because I want to clarify. Each of these tracks are at the same beats per minute, so they're lined up to be kind of seamless, but each of the tracks are independent. So I'm going to increase it, and it's going to fade this one out entirely and fade this one in. And I'm going to do that again. So I'm gonna pause, and then I'm gonna fade back out one step at a time so you can hear that. Okay, so those are two different kinds of blends that you may want. So I wanted to make sure that my system could handle both if I needed to, because I've done both in games before, and there's pros and cons to each, and that's a whole separate topic. The last thing I want to talk about is these assets. The way that we make a new track, I've actually used scriptable objects for that. And so a sound designer or a music person can come in here, create or I'm calling it SoundSystem, and create a music event. And then they can go and they can, put the layers in and, choose the layer type here and assign it to a mixer or whatever. And you can see how that looks. But the reason I wanted to do that is because you don't necessarily want a music person diving into code and trying to mess with all your components. You just want them to make a little asset and set this up however they want, so that in code, the programmer can just say, okay, I just need to hook up for a music event. So they make a little script, they open it up, and the sound designer just drags in the music events because they've already pre-configured them and they know how they want them to work. And so then in code, just to show you how this looks. So in code, all we're doing is we're pressing the play button. So we're just saying this song, right? This thing that we dragged in, that thing dot play, and then we just send it a fade time. And that's all we have to worry about. Once we have this tool built, We don't have to worry about how it plays. We don't have to worry about anything. Just what do we want to play, which the sound designer configures, and we tell it to play and we give it a fade time. And everything else is handled by the tool. And that's the way we want to build this. You can see how I was doing this now. So I press Q, it plays the first song. I press W, it plays the next song, and so forth. And the other thing I was doing is I was pressing the left arrow to left arrow to decrease the layer level and right arrow to increase it. And then we could add a fade time to, how it's blending the next layer. And then finally stop is just on the space button, and you can see that I'm using a different fade time for that, just to show that you can have varying things here. So anyways, this entire tool, I also wanted to show one more aspect to it. The first portion of this is actually pulled from a lecture given by, I believe his name is Richard Fine, about using scriptable objects with audio sources and sound effects. So you can actually go through that, and he provides some of the code for these little gizmos that let you do a minimum pitch and a maximum pitch. But I went on and I expanded on top of that to create, mixer support and, randomization for clips that could play. So you think footsteps or whatever, you don't want to play the exact same footstep each time. And just some other settings. And I also put that into object pooling. So if I hit play, you can see that when the sound is done playing, it disables and goes back into the pool. And the cool thing about this is we're not spawning a lot of sound effects at runtime. We've already spawned them. We're just taking an audio source and then swapping out the clips and, doing some setup things whenever we want to play a sound, right? And you can see that if I play a lot of sounds, I'm going to spam the button in a second, and then you'll see it'll create new ones dynamically. And so we make sure that we always have a sound source that we can play. So in this case, it is spawning a new one, but because we're not spawning a new one each time, it's a little bit more optimized. So anyways, I also wanted to build a sound effects system with this, and I'll go into that in the tutorial series. So anyways, a lot of cool stuff, a lot of code, but also a lot of practices for how you can build tools, just really showing you how you can break out your code into assets that a developer can use. But I'm hoping that by the end of this, you can actually build a tool that you all will want to reuse on your own projects so that you can do some more complex music blending and things. So I hope that, if this is interesting to you, I'm going to be working on building the tutorial series. So I wanted to introduce what it's going to be about. So hopefully you all find that interesting. Hang tight, because I'm still designing how I want to structure the tutorial series. And, I still want to focus on teaching things while I'm doing the tutorials. But in the end, you'll get a tool, you'll both learn and you'll get something practical that you can use on your future projects. So yeah, I will have that put together soon, and I hope to see you all then.